Welcome to our final podcast, episode 2. Not that we're sponsored by anyone, but Arc Script help us write the script, so check it out and throw us a like. Anyways, we're going to entitle this podcast When Anthropology Turned the Mirror, and Melody's going to expand on that. Hope you all are doing well and check it out.
Well, welcome back to Dreaming in the Deep. Last time we explored how whales and humans share rhythms of rest and culture. Today we're turning the lens on anthropology itself, how it dreams, doubts, and reinvents the way it represents the human story.
And it connects back to everything from episode 1. Just like orcas have their own sleep rhythms and cultural patterns, anthropology had to question how we know what we know. It had to ask whether any single viewpoint could capture the vastness of human and animal worlds.
So y'all, I think that's where Marcus and Fisher would come in. I want to start with a quote because it sums up their main point better than I ever could. They write that the human scientists are undergoing a crisis of representation. This crisis involves a loss of faith in the ability of any one method or theory to fully capture social reality. Grand theories and totalizing frameworks no longer command the same confidence. Instead, there is a turn towards local, experimental, and self-conscious approaches that highlight the partial, situated, and historical contingent nature of knowledge. Gosh, I wish I could write like that. But anyways, basically, they argue that anthropology and human sciences entered a crisis of representation. We stopped trusting a one-size-fits-all theory. We realized human behavior has multiple causes, multiple meanings, and cannot be reduced to a single law.
Which means anthropology wasn't a clean mirror anymore. It was a storyteller. And storytellers always reveal something about themselves.
That is true. So the idea of culture and crisis, let's expand upon this. When Marcus and Fisher talk about this crisis, they're describing anthropology's shift away from grand theorizing theories or totalizing theories. Culture became something fluid, adaptive, negotiated, and more like a rhythm or tide than a fixed structure.
You can trace that evolution through Erickson and Murphy. Morgan saw culture as progress. Boas saw it as historical particularism. Geertz saw it as interpretation. Marx and Engels show how labor and production create culture. In the 19th century, San Simeon, under Captain Joe Clark, whaling culture formed around the daunting battles with leviathans, the grueling hours spent at the tryworks, and the villainous stench of whale rendering. That rhythm shaped identity as much as any belief system and culture.
Yep, and while we think about culture changing over time, we also have to think about how cognition shapes culture. So whales have something extraordinary. They have spindle cells, and these are special neurons linked to empathy, social memory, being self-aware, deep emotions, and fast communication between different brain regions. Humans have them, great apes have them, elephants have them, and so do whales, especially species known for complex family structures and cultural traditions, like orcas. So even in the ocean, culture is tied to advanced neural architecture. So, why does anthropology matter in these contexts? It matters because it lets us understand these connections. It helps us see the shared emotional and cultural threads between species, and it takes away the mystery behind differences and shows that all of us, all beings, human or whale, have social worlds worth respecting.
And in places like the San Simeon whaling station, anthropology reveals how people made sense of long nights, danger, and the transformation of whales into oil. It shows how human cultural memory is built, preserved, and sometimes forgotten.
Interesting. Well, so we all know this from the 550 class that anthropology teaches humility. It reminds us that even something as basic as sleep isn't universal. Orcas sleep unihemispherically. Climbers sleep in short bursts depending on their environment, and humans produce sleep spindles, which serve their own cognitive roles. So let's some quick takeaways from this, because a lot of this is a lot to unpack. You want to hit it, Melody?
Yeah, so quick takeaways: culture is learned, shared, and symbolic across species.
Anthropology bridges science and the humanities.
I agree with that. It studies how meaning shapes action, including how we rest and sleep.
So true. And it also can teach us where we stand in the story.
Gavin and Melody, you both mentioned the word spindle. I feel like that's something you find on a boat. What are you talking about?
Well, one of the most fascinating things about whales is their spindle cells. And these cells allow deep social memory, as I've said before, also emotional intelligence and intergenerational knowledge. Things that feel a lot like culture. Whale families remember feeding grounds, migration paths, danger zones, and even human interactions they've had across decades. Spindle cells help explain how some whales seem to remember whaling events generations later. Their cognition lets trauma, knowledge, and social learning travel across time. So a quick story in that regard, it's about when orcas used to be hunted and captured for amusement parks in the 70s. There was an area called Pin Cove where several babies were taken in the Puget Sound. And the orca parents and grandparents spent a lot of time calling out to their babies there. And then after that, they did not return to this area for 50 years. So that could speak to their incredible memory.
Gosh, that's incredible. And speaking about memories, humans have a different type of spindle, sleep spindles. These are bursts in brain activity during non-REM sleep or dream sleep. So middle sleep or non-dream sleep, it helps protect the sleeper from sleepwalking, but these spindles also consolidate memory. Sleep spindles literally lock memories into long-term storage. When sleep is fragmented or shortened, like in an industrial setting or in whaling crews perhaps, working overnight in the tri-works, I know this from personal experience, working 12 to 16-hour night shifts, my memory has definitely gone down because I'm missing that spindle activity. Cultural memory can become shaped by exhaustion, repetition, or trauma as well. So in a strange way, whales with spindle cells and humans with sleep spindles both show how neurological rhythms can possibly shape cultural rhythms. That is, how beings remember, adapt, and survive obviously heavily influences culture.
Yeah, it's fascinating that both of them have spindle cells and then what they're used for. But so, moving on, how is theory shaping our individual projects in these areas? The theorists who shape my projects, for example, in creating a museum exhibit are Pike and Assad, because Pike's emic and Edic perspective reminds me that an exhibit always has two angles: the insider's meaning and the outsider's analysis, who's viewing this. Assad argues that people deserve agency in representing themselves. For me, as an inspiring museum curator, that is everything. If I'm going to create an exhibit about orca and human relations, I want the people who view orcas as family to guide how their own history is portrayed. Representation should not erase or flatten their perspective. What I really hope is that when visitors see objects in a display, they feel a connection rather than distance. Humans and animals have always lived in cooperation, not conquest. Those old lifeways are worth remembering because they show that coexistence is possible. Anthropology gave me a home for this. because it tells me that listening, truly listening, is the foundation of good representation.
Well put.
Yes. For my work with the San Simeon whaling station, I found Marx and Engels to be extremely helpful because they show how culture is tied to economic production. In the 1800s, whale oil was a global fuel. It lit homes and businesses as well as greased machinery. Now, the hierarchy of shore whaling stations may have been similar to that of deep whaler, but they varied in the sense the captain of the shore whaling station, at least at San Simeon, would actually be going out with the crews. They'd be fighting these whales with the crews in the whaleboats together. The danger of the position of the whaler in the boat, as well as their specific skills, is what developed this hierarchy within shore whaling culture, which does contrast with that of the deep sea whalers. And Ingalls helps me to see these economic relationships turn it into social ones. And Levi-Strauss gives another layer. He wrote about how societies transform nature into culture. The try-works at San Simeon are a perfect example. You take a whale, a living being, and through fire, labor, and technology, you turn it into oil, money, and social value. The transformation is cultural, not just mechanical. So when I excavate the site, I'm not just looking at old stone, charcoal, metal, brick. I'm looking at the physical remains of a cultural system built on labor, power, and the idea that nature exists to be transformed.
Nice.
Yeah. I feel like I need to buff up on my whale knowledge after talking to you too. I mean, I suppose like bringing it back to Marcus and Fisher, they help me think more clearly about how scientific and cultural stories shape what we call normal. Their idea of crisis of representation shows that any account of human behavior, even scientific ones, is always partial and shaped by the framework used to describe it. This fits directly with my thesis or upcoming research because sleep science treats the 8-hour monophasic model as if it was a universal biological requirement. But it's actually a cultural narrative shaped by industrial labor, or at least I hope to prove that. There is data behind it, but anyways, climbers create their own representations of rest through lived experience, environment, and community knowledge. Their sleep is flexible, segmented, and weather-driven. It's shaped by fear, effort, and adaptation. Marcus and Fisher help me argue that the dominant sleep model is only one representation among many. The climbing community defines recovery in ways I think the rest of medicine and the sleep community can learn from. And they can learn from other cultures' ways of sleeping as well. So I think it's important to study these kind of microcultures and megacultures that kind of challenge what people have been telling us should be our normal.
So your project really is post-crisis anthropology. No single universal narrative, just overlapping local truths.
I guess that's exactly it. Marcus and Fisher basically gave anthropology permission to, no pun intended, dream differently. My puns are horrible. I'm sorry, you guys.
They're perfect.
But I mean, anyways, like, let's get back to it. After the crisis, where does that leave the cleanliness of the mirror, so to say, Greg?
Well, anthropology's crisis wasn't a collapse, it was a rebirth. It opened space for new voices and new ways of understanding humans and other species.
Yeah, definitely. And it reminded us that culture is everywhere, in humans, in whales, in memory, and in the rhythms of sleep.
Nicely put. And that every story, I think, is partial, even memory shaped by experience, but together they help us understand how beings rest, remember, dream, and live.
Good point.
Well, let's close. I think we can close it up right now. What do you guys think?
I think for sure.
Yes.
This has been Dreaming in the Deep.
Episode 2.
Thanks for listening, and keep questioning how we tell the human story. I think it would be so funny if I added at the end the little blurb where you're like, hold on, let my cat stop throwing up.
Let my cat finish throwing up. I'm sorry. It's okay, honey. Get it out.
Look at what we just did.